And we're live. Welcome everybody. Fake Whale, first episode of 2023 on Friday the fucking 13th too, with Laurence Fuller. Hi Lawrence.
Hi,
How you
how's it
doing?
going? Good. Getting my morning started. Friday the 13th.
Right on. Where are you right now?
I'm in West Hollywood. Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
that's where
I've
you live.
actually
You're
I live here. Yeah, I live here. I've lived here for about 10 years. A bit longer now, maybe 11.
That makes sense. Since I want to just kick it off with like you're the first actor I believe I've ever had the pleasure of having a long conversation with.
Mm.
And obviously, you're doing big things with the art and the Tezos and your hybrid, everything. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But I want to start out with the acting thing because when we ran into each other in Miami, I remember just randomly throwing at you, just like, what, like, what you acted in? And you said that show Minx. And I was like, oh shit, I've watched that. That's dope. Or maybe you said that in a Spaces, but either way, you said Minx, and that show was dope. So I just looked up who the hell you were in it because I didn't know. And David Hockney, holy shit! I was like, of course, like the coolest role you could possibly have in the whole show. So can you tell me about that? Can you just tell me about like I don't know what was it like getting
Yeah.
prepared to play David Hockney? What kind of research did you do? I guess like did you look at a lot of his paintings or like is he even alive or is he dead? I'm not sure.
Yeah, he's retired. Well, he's sort of retreated to France, but he's still painting quite often, as I understand. But he has like a studio out there, and he's not seeing as many people. But yeah, he's around, and he's still active. But so I'd already done a ton of research about for David Hockney because um, he was actually a very close friend of my late father's, and when they were young, they were doing stuff like we're doing together. They were like doing interviews together and running around to different galleries, and um, so they were connected from youth. And then David Hockney obviously blew up, became a superstar, and my late father was, um, you know, uh, an art critic, and he founded the magazine Modern Painters, and he was sort of
Whoa,
very
what?
central to, yeah.
Your father started that magazine?
He did, yeah. You
Holy
can still
shit.
go and
Okay.
like pick up a copy. And I mean, it's changed dramatically since he was the founder, since he was the editor of it. Um, but in its earliest days, it was about really deep discourse about art and really hard hitting art criticism. And that I'm pretty sure David Hockney was interviewed again for that because he loved Hockney's work. Um, and Hockney was on the cover of a number of his books as well, like Beyond the Crisis in Art. And so I'd done a ton of research about that because I was writing a screenplay about Peter and about his adventures in the art world. And uh, and Hockney features throughout it. He's sort of like uh, almost like the jester character, in that he comes in and he has something very sort of poignant to say, and in this very bright and colorful way, and then you don't see him again until later, sort of thing. Um, which is a perfect sort of character for David Hockney, I think. That's sort of like the role he plays in all our lives, I feel like. Uh, he has quite like a poetic presence in that he is there fleetingly and poignantly, and then he retreats again. Um, he's sort of a master showman in that way. Um, and so I sort of just directed, I guess, a lot of the research I'd done about Hockney, and up to the bit, and watched like the documentaries and footage from when he was around during the 70s, because Minx is set during the 70s. So and he did these, and the director sent me this too, this um, very strange. semi-documentary that he'd made at that time, where it was part acting, but he was playing himself, and it it was sort of like just an ultra realistic film because like it was dealing with his breakup but his actual breakup and his actual boyfriend that he was actually breaking up with featured in the film as well, and they were sort of playing out their roles of being a broken up couple and David wrestling with that, and ultimately what became the painting, um, where he's looking down into the pool as his lover is swimming naked, sort of beneath the surface, and he's all he can do is watch and in deep pain and not being able to possess his lover anymore. And that was the one that sold for I think $92 million like a couple years ago, and like broke all the records for I guess most expensive living painter. But you know, because of that time and David Hockney so sort of embodying that time and being such like a presence.
And we've lost Lawrence. See if he comes back here. Lawrence,
Sorry about that.
there
I
we
got a
are.
call.
Yeah.
I,
Oh,
I
no
got a
problem.
call. Sorry about that.
All good.
Yeah. So where did we leave?
Where did we leave
I
off?
missed the
Yes, I
last
don't
like
even
few seconds.
remember. I mean, we were talking about David Hockney, obviously, and your role in Minx, playing him and the research you had done. I don't know. I was gonna ask about the show in general. Maybe I was just gonna say like maybe you can just say a quick line or two about what that show was about because I actually watched that show and it was quite entertaining. So if somebody wanted to watch the show, I would recommend it. It's the first what is it? Female. Go ahead. I forgot already. Honestly.
Yeah, it was a radical feminist magazine. It started out a radical feminist magazine in the 70s that then became like the first iteration of Playgirl.
Yeah.
Um, and it so you know it was yeah, that's pretty much it.
It was a good show. It was surprisingly good, I think. And the main character, or the two, I guess, main characters, is that one dude, and he's in everything. It seemed like for a while there. So that must have been quite
Yeah.
like a fun set to be on. Or like, I have no idea like about what it is like to be an actor on set. Like, what is it like for you? Do you just go for the craft services and like sit in your trailer the whole time, or is it more of an experience for you on set, like interacting and like a full art experience?
Yeah, I mean, a set like that is such an ensemble cast thing. It's almost like theater, you know, everybody is sort of a family pulling it all together. So yeah, I was definitely interacting and enjoying it, and everyone was having fun with the David Hockney character, being like, "Oh my God, it's David Hockney," kind of thing, you know. And then I got to the writer was on set the whole time, which was super helpful because he was obsessed with every aspect. Like he'd read several biographies on Hockney, and like he knew how it intertwined with the story. Um, how David Hockney's journey intertwined with the story of that magazine so well. So it was really great to talk to Mason Fink about that. Yeah, and it was his first like series that he'd written that had gotten picked up. So um he was just so passionate about the whole thing. So it was great to just mainly spend a lot of time on set with Mason, um talking about
That's
Hockney.
awesome.
Yeah.
And so for everybody listening, that show was on HBO, right? It was like a Max original, or was it on regular HBO? I know you can watch it on the app.
Um so it was on HBO Max, but just yesterday it got moved over to Stars.
Stars.
Yeah, now, yeah, HBO Max
Oh,
created it the first 2 seasons, and then Stars, I guess, bought it from HBO Max.
okay. So we'll continue.
So, yeah, it'll continue.
Excuse me,
Mhm.
I'm just getting over a small cold. It's coming back from Wisconsin, was in the winter, it's just inevitable. So if you hear me coughing, that's why. Um,
Uh,
but when we ran into each other in Miami, also it came up that you kind of are selective about the roles that you take on. So Minx is kind of like the one thing you'll do for a bit, but the rest of the time you spend traveling around a little bit, you said, doing more art focused things or NFT events and things like that. Is that, could you just talk a little bit about that, about how you balance the work between being an actor and roles like, in Minx, and then your interaction with more the fine art community, the poetry community, because you're also a poet, of course, mainly, maybe you consider yourself a poet. Um, but I would just love to hear a little bit about how you balance, the acting work along with the more, poetry, fine art, and the blending of those things. And then we'll get into how you bring that all into the blockchain too.
Um, uh, yeah, so I'm very fortunate to have some great agents on my team that just really understand um, what I want to do, and they submit me for a lot of great stuff, and so we pursue roles that are, uh, I guess, akin to my journey, and I did a lot of digging into the independent film scene when I first got to LA, for a number of years, and so I did some great independent films. Um, things that went to festivals and things that were um, made on just like a whim and a prayer. The sort of, let's call it, the early days of hiss and nunk type movies. That were just 100% passion, and I'll always cherish my experiences on those movies. Um, um, but yeah, I think a lot of that energy um, that I had from going around to the film festivals with these different movies like Road to the Well, Paint It Red, Echoes of You, and the people that I met, and you know creating and delving into new screenplays and other people's screenplays has now gone into creating these poetic cinematic fine art pieces. Um, and my poetry really came out of my acting. I mean, uh, it became a part of my acting process. Mm, and that aspect came out of um, in method acting. There's a process called emotional journaling that I first learned really how to do from Ivana Chubbuck. Um, and she has some amazing sort of script analysis. Her stuff is very heady. It can be at times academic, as it's very psychological based. She comes from a psychology background, and there's a lot of writing and breaking down text and interpretation of human behavior through analysis. And that was all like coming to a point for me that was um I was finding myself so much in my head with it all. And she told me too. She was like, you're too in your head. She kept telling me this when I would go in and do scenes at a studio. Because you go and you do scenes from plays and cinema, and then she sort of breaks you down and kind of tries to reconstruct you. That's sort of the job of
I
a
don't
great dramatist. But
Yeah, not to
yeah.
interrupt, but emotional journaling, you said, as a practice in method acting, there's this such thing as emotional journaling. What exactly is that?
It's like, okay, so yeah, exactly. It's like,
Well, it
so
sounds like you're writing from the perspective of the character or something, or is that way off?
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times, See, here's the thing: the writing that you put into like emotional journaling is very different from the writing you would do from like an article or an essay or like we're talking now. You know, it's very much like from um, a deep place of like, it can be completely irrational and almost unreadable when you look back at it. It's just like getting out some really core things that are going on.
Okay,
Like
and that
come
makes sense. And then did you say though quickly after that that it's like a very academic process though? It can be very academic, it can be very heady, because it sounds very guttural.
Oh yeah, that aspect. See, emotional journaling is very guttural, but
Okay,
breaking down, but exactly like the way that I was learning script analysis from Ivana was very heady. And so
okay,
I was getting very heady with my process. I was getting too sort of uh rigid in my thinking about behavior. And I hadn't been that way before. I was super like expressive and emotional, creative, colorful actor
sure.
before
And
I
so what was
before,
the script analysis then that got super heady? Like what process or like how, I want to know like what you what was going on in your head that was like super heady about it, were you psychologically psychoanalyzing your character in every single line, or like how did that go?
yeah. Yeah, no, I've got um some notebooks here that are like, let me see if I get one of these notebooks from years ago, and I would just like break down every single line.
You're breaking down all
Anyway,
the lines, and I mean, I love shit like this when you kind of go like too far down the rabbit hole, a little off the rails, a little bit um neurotic.
exactly. Like I was neurotic is the right word. I was getting like
Yeah.
super neurotic about every single line and just breaking things down to like a ridiculous extent. And I just have, anyway, I have tons of these notebooks that are just full of pages of scripts, and then I'm taking them and like pulling them apart every single line. And she was like, you're getting too in your head. You're becoming too um methodical about it, I guess. uh you need to, yeah, go with your instinct more. And for I think like a year or two, I lost my not lost my instinct, but I was following my mind more than my heart when it came to the acting process. And maybe that had also come out of auditioning for a ton of stuff in Los Angeles, like a ton of movies and like crazy opportunities that I was getting through these auditions, and um, feeling like it was, I don't know. There's always, you always feel like you can do better. Yeah, I don't know. I think I was internalizing uh, the the grind of going out and auditioning for these films and these TV shows and stuff. And so, yeah, I guess my way out of it was following my heart, and like these sort of more freehand journaling and finding a voice within myself that was just coming out of me, that was more unfiltered. um it's where the poetry also started to come out. And I always loved poetic language. I mean, that's my roots. Like I studied classical theater in England because of that, and um dedicated basically my training, my university years, to classical text. And performing in the West End when I was very young was, uh, I was like 21 when that happened. It was very instrumental. It really shaped my ideas and about storytelling. And so coming back to that poetic language, which has its roots in romanticism, in the performance of it, in that you have to follow your heart so much with these passionate expressions, say that like Shakespeare puts into his storytelling, that are just there for the enjoyment of the moment of it and the expression of that passion. So that all that stuff sort of started to come out of my poetry, and finding as well at that time, while I was writing the screenplay about my father and doing research on him, that he wanted to be a poet. Like that was his, if he could do anything, he would have been a poet. And it happened to be that he was found the profession of an art critic, because those were the people that were hiring him to write at that sort of level. But what he had a couple of books of unpublished poetry in his drawer that he'd written over years, that I guess was just something that was really special to him, but he never put out there yet. And reading letters with his publisher as well about, they wanted him to start to explore more fictional work. And I guess he was afraid to take on that, a novel. But I think it was the same process happening in him too. You come to a point with something, a way of thinking and a way of viewing the world, where what you need to punch through to the next level is to go back to your intuition. So poetry for me was about finding my intuition again. And seeing all those things, like seeing a way of approaching a character and approaching a script and approaching a performance in a poetic way, as opposed to an analytic way, was like a breakthrough in my acting. And also, several books of poetry came out of it. And it took over a daily process for me. I think before, when I was obsessing about this or that with my acting career or something in my acting process, kind of fed into just enjoying writing a poem, which was way more enjoyable.
That's beautiful. There's something about poetry that does seem to be about flow more than anything else, at least to me. Like I don't know anything formal about poetry whatsoever, to be honest. Like but this is that kind of poem or that whatever with the line structures and whatever. I don't know any of it, but I've read more poetry in recent years, and my favorite seems to be just the stuff that doesn't make any sense. Like there's no structure or anything at all. And that's my favorite. But because it seems just to be about flow, like it seems to be more, to me at least, art in the way that you can't really critique it. It's just like it is what it is, no matter what that is. Do you know what I mean? And there seems to be a certain freedom about that, or at least to me, at least, there seems to be a real freedom about that. Do you find
Yeah.
that it's hard not to be, or so? Since you're an actor as well, is everything from the perspective of a character for you? Or
Mm.
is there like, is your poetry the core, or or is everything just like a perspective of, a fragment of a character, a fragment of maybe, even if that's yourself? Because it's something I think about in regular, artwork, but with poetry and being an actor, how easily it could be to slip between voices, uh, you know?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely always looking for the story in the poem now. And I suppose that was something that was quite natural for me, even from early on, is finding the story in the poetry. I mean, my early work actually was way more abstract than it is now, and I've found over time ways of containing that poem within a piece or a series that does have uh, some more linear storytelling aspects to it. And that is because of how my work has evolved, and also it's sort of like telling parts of a personal history and a connection to the culture that is like evolved over time to sort of have um a little more structure, I think, in what this piece is at this time and how it fits into a broader picture. And I've enjoyed that too, though. I mean, that's sort of helped give me guidance and sort of take that, um, let's say, like emotional sort of writing into a narrative. Has Yeah, I kind of enjoy that structure now. Sort of, we were just talking about how like I broke down all the psychological barriers of structure and analysis and brought out the poetry, but then I'm realizing story then took me off into more structure. Um,
But
and
that's more self-developed structure, it seems like, right? Instead of some sort of imposed outer.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think
I
you are
mean,
right about that.
I need to work within systems myself. I create, like, I scream, freedom at every turn. And then when it comes to creation, it's like, let me set up my parameters. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. It's funny. I mean, and also I think I really look at what comes off the page. Like I really, and I think that's an intuitive thing from like working with so much classical text, especially, or very dense writing is like, and when you listen, and you can kind of see what I mean if you listen to an audiobook, right? There's so much stuff that doesn't come off the page because it wasn't intended to. It wasn't intended to be an an orator form. It was supposed to be read. Um, so, and that is to do with the different medium between novel writing and poetry and performance. And the same thing is if you sit down and read a Shakespeare play, it's not a very good read, honestly. They're not meant to be read. They're meant to be
yeah.
performed, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so finding what is going to come off the page, because ultimately it is going to be performed, and that is the medium, is the spoken word. Uh, it's something I really found in Val Kilmer's work. Um, when I started working with his poetry, it I noticed that it was better spoken than it was written down,
Hmm.
because Val is a performer and he actually had poetry as an integrated part of his performance in his life, like from way before I did in my journey. I had no idea about that until I connected with him in the space and started collaborating with him on his poetry, that it was such an integral part of his life. Um, and
I need to
actually
watch that
his,
documentary on him. Isn't there a really good documentary on him that came out recently?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Val by Amazon is it's a wonderful documentary to see like these different aspects of his journey. Like, yeah, because we see one side. We see like Batman, the movie star, the guy from Top Gun. You don't know that he had all these sensitive parts of himself, and a lot of people don't even know he went to Juilliard. He was the youngest ever actor to be accepted into the Juilliard, and his audition piece was his Super Rare Genesis that we worked on. Um, was his audition piece for Juilliard, and it was a poem that he'd written, which like I'd been through the process of auditioning for drama schools when I was young. It was like super nerve-wracking. You go in with You're competing against 5,000 people that want to get into these top drama schools, all about your age, and they're all doing the same pieces over and over. Like the auditions will see the same speech from Hamlet, the same Richard III, the same Henry V, And apparently there's trends as well. Like some years it'll just be a ton of Richard III's coming in, or a ton of Hamlet. And not many people choose Richard III. Actually, I was like kind of unique in choosing Richard III as a 19-year-old. And most of the response I got was like, "Why did you choose this? This is like, Richard III is like middle-aged king that's all like hunched over and weird looking." And we're like, "You're like a 19-year-old leading man. You should have been doing Hamlet. Like, what are you doing?" But but for Val to have written his own audition piece was really gutsy.
It got
Yeah,
him in.
he got him in. It did. It was a risk that paid off. It was like,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah,
That's
sometimes you
that's
got to go for
incredible.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you collaborated with Val on his Super Genesis. That's wonderful. I knew you had collaborated with him, but I know that you collaborate with some other colleagues of yours as well. I wanted to get into that a little bit about so how you got into NFTs, blockchain, etc. But leading into that, were you doing like visual poetry or theatrical like visual, art in whatever medium, video or painting, whatever, AI, anything, just how you've been pairing visual with poetry. I know you're doing spoken word. I would love just to hear about that process, I guess your visual creative process and how that joins with the poetry. And then I know that you dove into Tezos pretty hard early on, or pretty heavily early on. So I would love to hear the bridge too. So
Yeah, I mean, the correspondence between the language and the performance and the painting, or the visuals, um, is something I found roots in like Baudelaire with. And obviously my late father's writings too, finding that connection between language, just the written word of storytelling, um, historical narratives, and where like a painting or visual symbology fits into all of that, is a wonderful journey to take for the imagination, um, and really influence, I guess, how I approach the cinematic fine art, and working with painters like Tanya Revillas quite often, you know, Goldcat, Lit King, Heinrich Dahlin, and the special effects artists I work with, like Mawan and Kop Geldersten, um, Kopsgestalten, sorry. Um, it it's much the same. I think it's you know language is language is a series of symbols that sort of tie together to sort of inspire, entice, have an emotional punch, pull something, yearn for power or love, and probably those are the two main things. Um, and 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 get there in a myriad of complex ways that we have many options when it comes to language to get our end result in whatever we're trying to accomplish, and to communicate using these symbols. Visual storytelling is the same. Visual storytelling is a series of symbols, and the way those symbols correspond to each other is everything. That is the music of the piece. That is the note that you press here. This is the high note. This is the note where you take it smoother and softer and lull the audience into a dream, and then punch them in the face.
That's very musical too. So do you find that is poetry music as well? Is like how does music play into all this with you then? Like I mean, you were just speaking in musical terms it flowing from poetry seamlessly. But you started speaking about music.
Well, there's that wonderful quote from Voltaire: "Poetry is the music of the soul," um, and it is. And I think what Voltaire was hitting on there um, was much what they were getting at with Romanticism, in that the imagination and the search for beauty in and of itself is the thing, and all the guiding principles of society and the time that we live sort of just attracted to it like a magnet. The search for beauty is the narrative of the soul, and the search for beauty is the core place from where these things come out, and then the culture just sticks to it.
The search for beauty is something I think about quite a bit. The imagination in the search of beauty is what you just said. That was beautiful. Some people hear that and think of like vacuousness almost or whatever, but it's much more than that, right? Like the search for beauty. And could you just elaborate on that maybe a little? Like what you mean by that, or like what
Mm.
you take that as, the search for beauty. Is that transcendence? What is that? Is that different for everybody?
I mean, you're absolutely right. There's been a war going on between, um, and this is what we were talking about before, that war within myself of analysis versus the intuition. There's been a war going on in the human zeitgeist between beauty and reason, that has never really truly been resolved, though it's found, meeting points along the way. Um, it still exists, in our cultures, uh, and that battle that plays out in art more evidently than I think in other areas of society. That area that plays out in art and the search for beauty versus the search for um, some kind of ethical narrative, it is something that I don't know if we'll ever find a resolution for. But it's happening in art, and you can go to art and find that war between beauty and reason at any time. Throughout the 20th century, it was really prevalent. Um, and you have to ask yourself, I think, or we all have to ask ourselves, what happened to get to the point where art stopped becoming about the search for beauty?
Hmm.
What happened to our world? What happened to us? Are we? Is it a natural state at all to search for something else?
Hmm.
Um,
So the search for beauty being innate, you're saying, like an impulse in humanity, or yeah. Would you say that?
yeah, like as we wake up in the morning, I think that is our like a golden pursuit, like a guiding light. That the search for beauty is, as you said, our natural state. And if you take us away from all these trappings that um, cities bring, and go out into nature, it sort of just becomes a part of daily life. People that live out in nature and have studios, and artists who have studios in nature, or writers that have studios in nature. It's an enviable thing. Trying to go, the cafe culture is pretty shit in LA, to be honest
Hmm.
with you, and
Oh my gosh, yes, yes it is.
that annoys me that the pedestrian culture is not honored. because in Europe it's gorgeous. You can walk around and in Paris there's just people throwing coffee at you from everywhere you walk. Uh, and there's like great outdoor seating. You can sit anywhere, and it's a beautiful experience. You can so the aesthetics of a city, I think, are really important to an artist's life. So I'm just always sort of on the search to find like a better place to sit and write a poem. But I think city life and cultural trends and news, the media, all these things are influences on our tastes and our minds and who we become. And they're not necessarily natural influences. And they can, I think, art can become a narrative, a commentary on the media, on those influences that I'm trying to avoid. And the same can be on the internet. So I think once art goes down that narrative and takes on the aesthetics of the media, then it becomes just more stuff. But when it takes on the aesthetics of life itself, then it's sort of hitting on or searching for kind of a true purpose against the odds, against what other influences are saying art should be. Once something is out in the culture, once something is placed in, say, even a commercialized context, art is expected to be falling in line with what works. And let's say and this happens with the film industry too. This happens with like Avengers and blockbusters, and that's what ends up getting made because that's what's making money for the studios, and they think, okay, we'll make more of this, we'll make more money, which is kind of problematic because sometimes that works. And the things that require a bit more risk and the things that are a bit more honest when it comes to filmmaking can be hit and miss, right? They could make their money from it, or maybe it'll be a great film that won't make any money, and they're what they really get excited about is how they're going to make another billion from a movie. So is that going to be like an Oscar-y film? That's like unlikely. It's more likely if we bang out something that's like put everyone in tights and then give them superpowers, that'll make a billion. So the same sort of wrestle with commercialism in that sense plays out in art too, in art of all mediums. The wrestle between what is trendy now, what will work in that sense, what has sold for big dollars in this realm. Can I replicate that and sort of feed that into the commerce machine, or should I risk saying something that's truer to my own experience? And I think that that's something that artists wrestle with constantly.
Yeah. Yeah, to say it lightly, just like in response to all of that, you hit on so many things, and you kind of covered a lot of the things that I was going to ask as you were writing about, the meaning of beauty, the subjective nature of that. Is beauty purely aesthetic? or is it beyond that? I love what you said about, if you go out in nature, how you envy artists that have studios in the nature. I was just in nature for a long time. Um, and it is like, no matter who you bring out into nature, like the way that they look at it, they're gonna be like, that's beautiful, this is beautiful, no matter what. Like everybody, any language probably would just start remarking about what they find beautiful about that. And there is something natural about that, or just like completely beyond taste, beyond there's something almost objective about beauty on that level. And that's something I think about all the time, trying to figure out, is object or beauty objective? Is it possibly objective? Is that even possible that beauty be objective? you know is objectivity even real at all? Is something I question. You know what I mean? But when it comes to the idea of beauty, like trying to even define it is even interesting. But I won't start rambling off myself. But the search of beauty is so underrated. I feel like in art these days. I just love that you brought it up. I feel like whatever happened to that, like whatever, you bring something beautiful to a gallery, a lot of times they're just going to be like, what the fuck is that? That's bullshit, or whatever. Like, but it's beautiful, like they don't give a shit. They're like, I would rather have you shit on my floor, like, and like that's fine too. I get it. Like I get conceptual art and stuff, but sometimes when I want to say, like, I don't know, I was just trying to make something that looked dope, like that's terrible. Like, fuck you, you're not a real artist. And I'm like, I thought that's what being an artist was for a long time, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The search for beauty in and of itself, I think, is a big cultural statement because of what you just said.
It's almost
Um,
rebellious right
be,
now. Like you're looked down on if that's your goal. Like that, wow, you're nothing then. Like that, wow, what meaningless existence you have, or something. You have to say something political or have a statement or something. You can't just like be like, but isn't it cool? Like I want to say that all the time. Like, isn't it just cool? Like I just think that's cool. Like I go to the museums and I don't even like to read most of the time because I just want to be like, I don't know, I liked it. I got a vibe, it's cool. It's dope. I find it beautiful. Like that's enough, you know?
yeah, and I think basically we can hide meaning in beauty. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
meaning
Yeah.
has great beauty in and of itself too. But um, art history and walking through a museum is filled with secrets. And beautiful paintings as they line up on the wall, there is a treasure trove of puzzles and secrets that are sitting there in the symbols of each one and them collectively as a whole. And the same with like a book by, Flowers of Evil is my favorite poetry book as a book, as a collection of poems. It's
Who is that or what?
Flowers of Evil by Charles Baudelaire.
Okay. I don't know.
He's a
Cool.
he's a French poet. He was an art critic too, but he became more famous for his poetry. And he's written there's several poems. One, The Correspondences, which is all about um, taking the reader on a journey through painting, and it talks about Delacroix, Goya, Rubens, and so his connection between poetry and painting was really present. And I wonder if Baudelaire was around today, if he'd be creating like I am,
Oh,
because
that's
he was
cool.
in sort of 1800s, and so, but his stuff is, he loved aesthetics and beauty, and I think he was really mischievous as well with his poetry. Is filled with like sweet poison, and he can be very hard hitting and a bit of a bastard. But and I think that edge is really important as well when you're talking about beauty, because um, not everything is like fairy cakes and candy floss, like, you'd sort of drift off into kitsch if everything is just um, succulent all the time. You have to have an understanding of our innate nature is also an acceptance of our primal selves and our desire for power. It's not always something that we need to avoid, deny,
Hmm.
and think is a bad thing that we ought to repress. I think also letting that be what it is, letting the search for beauty be, organically intertwined for a will to power, um, and for it to be a method of gaining power is something, if we embrace it and accept it, can go even further, far beyond where beauty alone can take us. Um, I think uh, maybe the other way round can be dangerous, or when you repress a desire for power and
Mm.
pretend it doesn't exist, is maybe where things start to go wrong.
I like that. I would go along with that idea. Um, I like a lot of what you're saying because it seems to subvert a lot of the more common, narratives going on today. People want to deny the will to power and deny the search of beauty, and in lieu of I don't know, something else, I guess. But there's a subversion in that, and I too find these to be natural states, and I'm gonna definitely read Flowers of Evil. I love what you said about him. Like, you wonder if he would be doing similar things as you right now. Um, and that's a perfect segue into like more directly what you are doing right now. Could you just talk a little bit about that? Could you talk about, maybe truth, not really what you do with Val Kilmer, but like more of like the more personal works, I guess, like your own um entry point into minting NFTs and what they are, what your NFTs actually are.
Yeah. Um, so my solo works, and I also try to have this with the collaborations that I do, for them not to just be sort of one-offs, but to tie into um, a larger picture in some way. Because I think we're all writing these sort of great large novels as we go along about the story that we're telling, and that each piece is hopefully a chapter or a page in that novel. And it could be, chapter 50 over here, and then you go back to chapter 20 over there. And I think, especially on the blockchain and different platforms, it's really fun to play with that, because where someone is entering your world is always going to be different. Like the first piece of mine that somebody sees is not going to be the same piece that you saw or that somebody else saw. It seems to be, and particularly with our sort of viral world of like the latest piece gaining attention for that moment in time, or bringing back an older piece to people's attention. Um, that day could be the day that somebody discovers you, uh, and that's going to be a different day than you know somebody who found you early on. And so I think, uh, and that acceptance as well of that being okay, I think was a big one for me. Not having to uh, because the blockchain almost encourages this idea that there is a linear progression to each piece. Um, and I think that is an
Mm.
innate sort of obsession that I've had, that there is like a linear
Order.
progression to there's order to my beauty. You can probably pick up from this conversation. I'm always battling with that, some like uh obsession over something that's ultimately unimportant, such as order in the collection. But I think, that does read anyway. It reads at a glance. Like, you can pick up when you look at a collection. I think whether a voice is shining through or whether somebody is just trying different stuff, or
Yeah.
the latest technology came out, and so they're like playing with effects as they come out and
Hmm.
trying to be the first one to release an effect, or like a filter, or like, a way of creating AI that's new, and then everyone's like, oh, this is the new method, and they're buying it because it's a new method, and then that person has to immediately try and be the first one to put out the next like new method of creating. But what is actually going on is that I think an obsession with the process of, the latest way of doing, you know whatever, utilizing the technology for, blah blah blah, as opposed to like an obsession with how do I express this story? How do I express this thing in me? How do I communicate my imagination, um, and tell a story that fits into the culture in this way? Um, so it's problematic, But what the fuck was I talking about? Um, What were we talking about?
No, we were talking about your NFT works and like
Ah,
the connectedness of them all, the order that you find in the blockchain, you find very satisfying. It seems like in that the way that you're approaching visual seems to be in more organic sense, not some sort of like trying to jump on trend or something.
yeah. And the technology is updating in these amazingly fast-paced ways, to where you're working on something, and by the time you finish a piece, there's already a new way of,
Yeah.
there's already an update. Um, but so I found I found that pursuit pointless, because it takes me too long to
Hmm.
make pieces to be able to be the first person to put, and to put out the latest uh, look. So, um, but what that acceptance was, I think, as well, is uh, some people are going to come into start reading my novel at page 300, or maybe sometimes page 15. But even if they go to start at page 15, the next page they read could be page 300 or
Hmm.
page 200, and then they might jump back, and
Hmm.
and they're sort of piecing together their own novel of the pages and chapters that I put out, and and uh, and an acceptance of that, and also a joy in that. Um, I think has been really liberating.
Hmm.
Um, because the story of the King of Paradise, which is what people sort of have picked up on, that's been in my bio for many years, uh, is something that's like a through line throughout. And I've started telling that sort of origin story and where it goes, and like, you know the the larger story of the King of Paradise, and his realm, and how all of my pieces actually tie in to that. It is really fun to play with, because you have things that are expected of you, and then you have many options for how you can surprise. Um, so enjoying the show of it all, the theater of it all is really fun to play with. at the moment.
How did you find blockchain? Just in the like at the beginning, were you into crypto already? Were you invested in crypto and kind of through that, or was it a colleague of yours was like, "Yo, NFTs is a cool artistic medium"? Did you approach it that way? Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was a degen for a little bit, like, but badly so. I was
What kind of
interested in
degen?
blockchain technology. Like, I tried trading for when lockdown happened.
Oh.
Um, yeah, and I pulled a Trevor Jones. Like, he tells the story about how he lost a bunch trading, and
Yeah.
I also lost a bunch trading. So I had, me and Trevor, like that on that front. Uh, and then I heard NFTs in, I think it was Clubhouse, and then immediately was like, okay, well, I'm definitely gonna be better at that. And so so I tried it, and yeah, it turns out I am the I think it was like when I first heard about NFTs, it was like an immediate sort of like, oh my god, they're doing that with crypto. That's like a brilliant use case, because I was following narratives of use cases of cryptocurrency, and yeah, and I was really interested in how interoperability and was going to affect our world, just out of my own curiosity and personal interest. Um, and then when it became about NFTs and art and how um, culture is intertwined with all those things, that's when I was, I guess, came out of the Twitter closet as being a part of, the community. Because before in entertainment, and there was so many people following me for my film work. It was like I had 27,000 followers when I started in Web3, but from my film world and the acting world. No one was talking about crypto.
Hmm.
um, and because it was not had nothing to do with the film world or the arts. It was a financial sector. It was a tech sector. um, but then when it became about art, I was like, well, I can talk about that all day. So now I guess the majority of my posts include uh, a relationship to Web3.
I was gonna ask
um,
you about like your colleagues and stuff, if you get any flack or like maybe you don't say anything about it like around certain ones, but I did see that like some of your colleagues, well, Val Kilmer, of course, you worked with, I would consider him probably a colleague of yours, but other actors as well, and actresses into NFTs I've seen through your posts, but do you get any flack? Do you get any like Hollywood people being like, "What the fuck are you doing, man?"
I got a ton of flack from um, an art critic called Waldemar Janaszak, who colleague of my father, was following me because of that, and I kicked off a dialogue with him um, over the years. He had some great debates on TV with my father, and so and we had a friendship, and we were like supportive, and I was really interested in the projects he was doing. Then when I started doing NFTs, his tone somewhat changed in the comments of my posts, uh, and he is full on anti NFT. Like, he um, has been from the start. I think one of the loudest voices in England
Mm.
for NFTs being a scam, and actually was in this very well known interview with David Hockney about how NFTs are this massive scam, and they were both like, yeah, they're all for swindlers, and it's all bullshit, and it's quite a funny interview to listen to in hindsight. That was before I played the role of Hockney. Um,
Amazing.
and so, but then yeah, Waldemar's comments when I started to do drops and things like that, it sort of changed into good to see the JPEGs are still selling, and then posting. He would tag me in like stuff about Bored Apes, even though I never posted about Bored Apes, and it's not not part of the Bored Ape community, but I guess he
No, I get it.
found the association somehow. But um, yeah. So he was trolling me for a little bit, and then he kind of gave up, and he hasn't really spoken to me much since. And one Christmas I put together a wallet for Waldy, and it was going to be his Christmas stocking, and it was a Tezos wallet, and I got like the community to donate a bunch of pieces, and I still have it. It's got like 30 pieces in it, and I haven't touched it. I don't know what to do with it because my plan was to give it to Waldy. I was like, okay, this will convince him that there is something good to be found in NFTs from the Tezos art community. We'll make Waldy's wallet, and then he'll take that wallet, and then he will see the light. But I could never get him to accept the wallet.
That's funny. Oh wow.
So I try, I do try, and people, and I'm successful with it too. Quite like I think actors and the creatives are actually quite accepting of it, more so than people on the business side. I think the creatives are like, what can I do with this? Like, how can I
Hmm.
express myself?
Hmm.
A lot of them are on social media, and I think find, as I did, social media can be quite vapid in its just sort of, you know, you're supposed to look like hot, like you're in a magazine on the beach, or basically trying to replicate, your lifestyle as it would look in a magazine. And you know, I I remember trying. I remember doing a lot of that and like getting a lot of professional shots and things like that. And when I was traveling and get like cool travel shots, and that's fun, but it also gets quite quite boring. Like if that's all you're doing, um, and there's no real message behind that except the lifestyle that you're living, um, just for the sake of living a lifestyle to be seen online, to be living a lifestyle. It's sort of like people who are famous for being famous. It sort of becomes quite empty, and I think a lot of actors feel that way about social media. Like a lot of the top actors aren't even on social media, and I think for that reason, they're like, well, this isn't really an artistic expression. This is like publicity. Um, so I think being able to take social media and turn it into a canvas is something really exciting that the creatives in the film industry and in the arts generally, I think, can relate to a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's well said. And something I've actually thought about quite a bit over the years, using social media as more of a canvas than anything else. But I totally understand what you're saying about how empty it becomes when it's anything other than that. Honestly, to me at least, I wouldn't see the point if I wasn't trying to make some sort of artistic narrative through everything that I'm doing. I wouldn't understand the point of social media at all. Like,
Yeah.
so
And and there was some glamour, like when we were in Art Basel, like I got some cool pictures. Victoria West took my, she's a photographer that was hanging out with it. She took some cool pictures of me that were kind of glamorous. And, for that purpose, it's promoting an art culture, and it's glamorous. And okay, occasionally, you know,
sure.
we all dabble in a bit of glamour. Why not? But
What brought you to Miami? What were you doing there? Were you showing work? Were you just visiting for having a good time, or were you involved in an official capacity of some sort?
yeah, I had a piece in the Royal House of Medici exhibition,
Oh,
which
cool.
is part of Miami Art Week, and that was around the corner from the convention center. They had their setup. That exhibition, the curation for that was insane. I mean, it was Zancan, Claire Silva, Michelle Petrelli, Jenny Pasanin, Tanya Aviles, Ilya Shkipin, just actually just full of artists that are like my favorite artists. Von Doyle, and Upsky Down, Siobhan Wong. It was a crazy lineup. Hans Himmel. This lineup of artists that are creating in quite often a neoclassical way, and the theme was to reinterpret Renaissance iconography, which many of the artists kind of do anyway. And my piece was The King's Fawn, which is kind of like a prelude to the origin story of the King of Paradise. This fawn that's sort of lost in a forest stumbles upon a mask, and that takes him deeper into the forest, where he starts hearing these voices and starts hallucinating. And yeah, so that's an interesting chapter in the story of the King of Paradise. So I created that for the Medici exhibition, and that was my main reason for being there. But I mean, it was brilliant to connect with the people that I did out there. I was staying with Zancan. He was staying with me for a couple days before he decided he wanted his own room, just because I think my couch, the fold out sofa bed, was not as comfortable as he could afford. He just had the drop on Verseworks, which was massive. So he was like, "Well, I'll get my own."
Yeah,
I'll get my own comfy bed.
Yeah,
but it was awesome going around Art Basel with Zancan, and getting to know him. Like, he's actually quite a serious artist. He's quite he's quite a serious dude.
I got to hear him speak in London, actually. He was on a panel. I got to hear him speak a little bit, but I love his work. Yeah, and his verse drop was super dope. That was right before I had a drop on verse a few weeks after that. Verse is great as well.
Oh right, yeah, verse. I like Mimi, and I like talking to them, and
shout out
yeah.
Mimi, shout out verse.
Shout out to
Verse
me.
works is dope.
Yeah, really professional. The whole, and I love your guys' setup too. A Fake Well, I think you guys do
thank you.
Fantastic job. And yeah, verse 2 and Ninfa is really interesting as well. These kind of like indie curated platforms. I think there's some shining stars amongst what you guys are doing, and I really like creating for these like boutiques that are popping up. I think that's a really healthy thing for the ecosystem if they can keep going.
It's absolutely needed. Like, the more culture driven, I guess, or just a different perspective on this community is very needed. Things that elevate the more I hate saying it over and over, but like the more art driven uh, things that are happening within this community. And I'm just looking really quick because because you're dropping with us, I believe, right? Yeah, there we go. On Object on the 17th. So I guess in closing here, I was about to ask you like what you have coming up or anything, but you have this coming up with us. So could you talk about what you have coming up here? It's the drop will be on the 17th of January, and it's with he's an actor as well, right? Vincent D'Onofrio. Vincent D'Onofrio. He had what is, refresh me. I know him. Why?
Yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio for me is one of my top 10 all time favorite actors.
Was he in Daredevil?
Yeah, he's in Daredevil right now.
Who's he play?
He's Kingpin.
Fucking wow. Jeez. I really dug the Daredevil show. I'm not like a huge superhero TV show movie fan, but that Daredevil show was sick. and largely because of fucking Kingpin. Holy shit! Like that character was beautiful. Like he like so sophisticated and so romantic and then so brutal. It was fucking
Mm.
awesome. I mean, I was so
Yeah.
into it. So cool. Okay, you're working with fucking Kingpin. Yeah, sorry. I just sorry to gush for a minute, but yeah, I mean that role was huge. Like I thought it was just so good. Anything I've seen where he's in it ever since, I'm like, I'll watch that for sure. Like whatever he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, talk about artist as actor. He is really, he's this character actor that really just became known, I think, ever since he did. I mean, his first big role was Full Metal Jacket, Stanley Kubrick's
Hmm.
Full Metal Jacket. But, since Men in Black, I think, has become known as the
Oh,
guy.
Men in Black. I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
he played the cockroach man.
Yeah.
Like, he was
Yeah.
pretty much the
That's
star
that's,
of the show. Like,
that's hilarious. Wow.
yeah. And ever since that role, like, I think they get him in as like a character mechanic. And kind of the deal is like, he can do whatever he wants with the character. It's when Hollywood doesn't know what to do with the character that they're like, okay, give it to Vincent. Like he'll
But it's like somebody
do.
pivotal, and they're like, yeah, it's important though, but we don't know what to do, so give it to him. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, exactly. And because I mean, and in Law and Order as well, he Criminal Intent. I
I've
remember
never
watching
watched
that
Law
as a
and Order.
kid.
He was on that with like for a long time.
Yeah, he was one of the lead detectives
Really?
for like 10 years, but
Um,
he did it. He had that show Criminal Intent, which I guess was a spin-off of the main one. And it was all about Detective Gorin, his character, who was like a super eccentric detective, and he was such like a presence on screen. Like at first, they didn't know what to do with what he was doing because his behavior and the way he was figuring things out. He was like a Sherlock Holmes kind of thing, but they had to like restructure their entire process for network television to sort of accommodate his performance, and then it just became like its own thing and ran for 10 seasons. And I think he redefined acting in network television at that time. Really, I don't, and I don't think that's an overstatement.
is
Um,
that a good show?
for his performance, yeah. Criminal, it's an
Yeah,
old show now, and it's a network TV show. But if you just watch it,
that's
especially
why I
like the
asked.
first season, just to see what he did to basically change the game for performance in television, it's worth watching an
Hmm.
episode or two. Um, I love hearing him talk about it in interviews, and um, but yeah, but I mean, the I think if you want to see a gem in Vincent's over of work, it's like The Cell for me is like,
Mm.
have you ever seen The Cell?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. With Jennifer, what's her fucking name?
Jennifer
um,
Lopez.
yeah, there we go. Jennifer Lopez. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a sick movie, man. Wow. I mean, yeah, a lot of dark fantasy, dark Salvador Dali type imagery. Yeah, I saw it when I was young. Definitely impacted me.
Yeah, well, Vincent's the serial killer in that.
I mean, yeah, it's like, yeah, now
Yeah,
that you say that, it's all coming back or whatever. I mean, I just
yeah,
remember seeing, I was pretty young. I mean, yeah, it was really, oof, like for the time, at least for my age, it was like intense movie.
yeah. There's so many parts of it that I think made it quite like a standard thriller, quite like a standard. And in any other way, if it weren't for the artistic direction and Vincent, would maybe have completely gone under the radar as sort of a nothing movie.
Hmm.
But because of Tarzan Singh's artistic direction, his influences from contemporary art, like interweaving Damien Hirst's work
Hmm.
very clearly, um, and
Was
going
Damien
into
Hirst
this,
directly involved at all? Do you know?
I don't know.
there is that horse scene where like the knives come down or the blades come down and like chop the horse, and then the pieces come apart. And I mean, it's exactly like Shark Tank of Damien Hirst or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But there is a number of other ones. But the horse scene was definitely, I remember when I was when I can't remember how old I was when I first saw that, but when I first saw it, I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah. That's what I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, I think I had a similar thing. Like I was like, wow, like the power of the art in that movie is wild. Going through that serial killer's imagination. Um, and then Vincent's character work in it is this like sort of innocent child trapped within this
Mhm.
monster. Uh, is beyond like it, I didn't think like a character that dark has been represented as well. Like everybody is watching Dharma now and talking about the performance in that, but I don't think
I
it
haven't seen
holds
that.
a candle. It's the most watched TV show ever, I think. Um, but I couldn't get through it. I think it is so so gruesome and sensationalizing serial killers and whatever. It doesn't really. I don't think it holds a candle to what they did in the cell in terms of the telling that story and
Hmm.
Vincent's character work as well. It's just fascinating. And
I think I'm gonna
anyway,
watch it again today, like tonight. That's gonna be what I watch. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, it's been a long time. I'm excited. Actually, that sounds really good. What are
yeah.
you two working on together? Like, is this the first time you've collaborated, or have you collaborated a lot? Is he into, Tezos, NFTs? But what's going on here?
Yeah, so it was funny, a tweet from him, and because he is passionate about poetry. Like you look at his feed, he posts his poetry every day, way more than his acting. Um, but his poetry, it comes from him, and it's about oftentimes it comes from the same place as his performance and his acting, and so it's you know I didn't know that he worked in that way, but in a similar way that I did, and I guess that Val did too. Um, until I connected with him on Twitter, and this was before Web3. I connected with him, and I was posting about his work and how much he'd inspired me as an actor. And then when I started posting my poetry and my pieces and my drops and things, yeah, he he just really liked it, and he started posting it too. And then this was back when Ethereum was having ecological problems. His a bunch of his followers started like trolling me, and I was like, this isn't good. What if like I get more attention from people like Vincent and more sort of figures that mainstream, and who are just excited about my art. I don't want any these other problems. So that's actually the reason I went to Tezos. And that was in March 2021, was because Vincent had posted a piece of mine. Uh, but it wasn't until a year and a bit later that um, he posted something else of mine, and I said, every time he posted one of my pieces, I was like,
An
you know,
honor.
over the moon. I was like running around,
Mhm.
like Vincent posted one of my pieces.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome. But and then I was like, what have I got to lose? Like I wrote in the comments, maybe we should collaborate. And then the next morning I woke up to a DM from him saying, what do you mean by collaborate? And then from there, I was like, okay,
What a dry response. What do you mean by collaborate?
yeah, yeah, no, he's a man of few words in working with him,
Hmm.
but in other ways, a man of many, because it's his poetry that we've been working
Mhm.
with. And so I told him if he could just send me through like a recording of his poetry, and then we can do something with it, right? So he did. He kind of pulled out this performance, and he loves performing, so he that all came very natural to him. And then the first collaboration we did was with Heinrich Udalen and Ruben Froh for my metaverse exhibition Poetics. And Heinrich and Ruben and I had been asked to collaborate and had been talking about it since early days of Tezos. But then sort of finding that addition of Vincent D'Onofrio's poetry and his performance was, I think, really fun for us all to play with the idea. So I took it to Ruben and Heinrich, and we created what became Flood of the Soul. Heinrich and Ruben back and forth about the visuals and the painting and the world of Flood of the Soul, which had been something that we'd been working on for close to a year in the background. And then sending it back to Vincent, and he was like, "This is like hypnotic and fascinating. I never would have thought to do this." And then as the drop came out, I could tell he got like more and more excited. Like his messages were like, "What if I like do a video of me performing it?" And and then as soon as the drop happened, like the next day, he sent me another performance, and that's what became the piece that we have coming up on the 17th.
Awesome.
Yeah, which is like, I wanted to, so this is collaboration just with me and Vincent with animated AI work. And I wanted to create something that was very like dramatic and theatrical, and felt like what would an animated painting of like a movie with me and Vincent look like. And it was, he told me this was like a memory of him looking back on a lost love that he'd had when he was younger. And that was the direction that I had to go on for the visuals. So you can see it's inspired by figurative painting, and like particularly British figurative painting, but figurative painting generally, I guess, of mid 20th century. But I wanted that aspect of nostalgia, but not too much, because it feels like a contemporary drama. His writing is very contemporary, and it's Vincent looking back on a lost love, and I, in a way, play the young Vincent. But it's also about these two voices that are speaking inside of his head as well. So it's I kept my own voice. I didn't do a Vincent D'Onofrio impression or voice. I kept my own voice to have those two voices very distinct. Yeah, and it's a new thing for me. I think it's definitely a new chapter in my work.
That's awesome. I mean, I can't wait to see it. I haven't seen it yet, but I definitely will be paying attention. Next, I was looking at the calendar, the 17th of January, right? Is that when it's dropping?
17th. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So that's next Tuesday. I think this will. I'm not sure when this will go live. If this will go live that day. If it does go out beforehand, definitely be paying attention, everybody listening. And if this is after the 17th, it will be on Object, obviously. Is everything that Vincent does with you, or is Vincent getting into NFTs on his own now?
So Flood of the Soul was just a collaboration. It was his Genesis piece, and a collaboration with me, Heinrich and Ruben, with Genesis piece that we took to Tezos. I don't think he knows much the difference between Tezos and ETH and different platforms. He just is in it for the art.
I love it.
And his wallet is attached to his Twitter account, so we have that verification. But I think I've noticed he hasn't really moved the crypto, so I guess I'll have to talk to him if he wants to.
No, that's cool. I like it. I like that he wants to interact with Web3, and it's in this meaningful way. Clearly for him, it's not about the market at all, which it's great. I think that's wonderful. Especially him. I mean, As an artist, he seems like, I don't know. I feel like I have a lot of respect for him as an artist, and you as well, obviously. And it's an honor for us to be, have you guys both working together for something for Fake Whale. So definitely give him our best as well. We're super stoked to have him on board, part of the Fake Whale crew, and you as well. So is there anything else that you want to give a shout out before we close this one out? I've had a really great time talking to you, man. It's been really a pleasure. I wrote down a whole lot there in the middle when we were talking about the imagination in search of beauty. That's what I would call this this episode if I were to name the episodes. But that was some really, really good, powerful stuff that I wrote down. Quite a few things to think about in the future. So I really appreciate your time, your insight. Um, your journey is really, really interesting. I'm sure I'll speak with you a lot more in the future. But is there anything else you want to promote? Any drops you have? Any projects besides NFTs or a show you're in coming up? Anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, you guys are kind of associated with demo tapers, right?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with it all yet. I need to get filled in because I'm super curious myself. We're just all so busy. But tell me, please, what are you doing something with them?
Yeah, I really like working with them too. Taking like these iconic songs and collaborating with the musician of these like crazy sort of songs that they're able to get. I was hosting space for them for Chasing the Sun just recently. But upcoming, I'm working with Vittorio Grigoli, who is Pavarotti's
Oh,
protege,
yeah.
and yeah,
I
like
met
the
him. He's
oh, you met
amazing.
him.
I met him in Switzerland at the Value Art Gallery, actually. Shout out Value Art. Shout out Vittorio. He was amazing. He was coming off of some sort of show the night before or whatever, but I remember yeah, like there's pictures of actually the founder of Value Art and me and Vittorio. It's so funny, but everybody that met
Cool.
him was just, we all talked about him afterwards in kind of a mystical way because he is a piercing character. I've never met anybody like him in my life where he just held you in his presence and like, I don't know. There was almost like I say this in a good way, but there was almost like a violence to it where it was just like you were just like against your will, just gravitate to this man. His eyes just pierce through you. Yeah, but anyway, so you're working with him. That's amazing.
Yes, there'll be a couple of us doing a collaboration with his song, uh, with an operatic song of his that I'm really enjoying creating, basically like an AI movie, and I guess an art film out of his song, and that's going to
This
be
makes sense
dropping.
now. I see this, you guys working together for sure.
Yeah, and I'm performing in it too because you can take video footage and create AI
Hmm.
out of the video footage and make it back into a video. Um, so I'm performing in the visuals as well as so it's my first time trying that, being a character within the art as well.
How cool. When will this happen?
Um, on the 27th
Of January.
of January, it's coming up, so
Is that on
uh,
Object as well?
that'll be on Object. It'll be open edition. They want to
Awesome.
try. They want to try doing open editions now.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Object is doing open editions. I didn't know that. That's new.
Um,
Cool.
well, I think that they are working on that. So I'll put the disclaimer that it'll
It
just
may
be
not.
minted as a high edition, and
Okay.
then for a period of time, and then we'll
Oh,
cut it
okay.
off and burn it.
It
But
works. Yeah.
yeah, fake well, I think are wanting to do open editions because it's kind of in line with like how music
Yeah.
kind of drops as like
It
a
really, yeah,
higher
that's the
edition.
truth. Yep, the
Yeah.
truth. Like music is meant for a broader audience for, it seems like a lot of listeners. That's exciting. January 27th. So we have January 17th, we have January 27th. Awesome. Anything else?
Um,
Not that that's
I
not
guess
enough. I mean, fuck, like you do so much. You have Minx on Stars. Is season 3 going to be coming out, or are you,
I think that they just finished season two, and
okay.
I had lunch with the writer, and he was like, "I guess there's potential to bring back Hockney, but I don't know if it's on the books or not." So
They need a whole
uh,
separate show. How about that? How about we get a
they
Hockney show? I would love that.
definitely need to do a spin-off. Yeah, a Hockney show would be great. I'd be down for it. So if you could have a word with them,
Yes,
that'd be
I'll take
awesome.
care of that. Thank you so much, Lawrence. This has been a real pleasure. Cheers, everybody. Until next time. Fake Whale Live. We're out. Peace, everybody.